guys, welcome back to another episode of the Patsa podcast. This will be the last episode of the 24-25 season. We concluded the season with 0 titoli, outlook that, a month or two ago didn't seem possible, finishing the season with 0 titles. But due to a collapse of epic proportions, one that maybe we've never seen before, we ended the season empty-handed, and it's a season that will go down as a disappointment, regardless of the highs and the lows that we had this season. No doubt, finishing the season with 0 titles when a month ago we were in discussion for potentially winning the treble, having all 3, the Coppa Italia, the Scudetto, and the Champions League in our grasps, and ending the season with not a single one of them, and ultimately ended the season in the most embarrassing way possible is a pill that's tough to swallow, and it's been tough to swallow. It's on a Monday now. The ending of the Champions League match was 2 days ago. It's tough to even call it a match. It was an absolute drubbing, and it's something that it's a bad thing, but with reflection and perspective after the past couple days, maybe it's something for the best for this club. We'll get a little deeper into that maybe, but before we dive into we're not going to really do a deep dive into the match. We're going to glaze over some things, but before we do that, please give a like, subscribe, comment, share, thoughts, anything that you have about this 24-25 season. It did end terribly, but there was some great moments. We still have some great players. It was a season that ended dramatically, almost the way it started. If you think dramatically, we had some games at the beginning of the season. Was it Genoa away where 2-2, the last second penalty, and then some other crazy matches at the beginning of the season. And then for it to end the way it did, it's a typical Forza Inter. 5 years ago, Conte came through and took away the Forza Inter theme song, beloved by fans, said that we need to get out of that mentality. Forza Inter should be no more. But when it's embedded in your club's history and culture, it's impossible to get rid of. And this season encapsulates what it is to be Forza Inter. Unfortunately, with the highs that you get from that, there's the lows that hit you just as hard. And that's the reality of being an Inter fan. So we'll talk a little bit about this Champions League match. Try not to go on long rants or give too much rambling, I guess. It's tough when it's a match that ends the way that it did. For anybody, if you've been living on a rock and don't understand what I'm talking about, Inter were handed an absolute ass kicking. They were bent over and spanked by the team from Paris. It was a game that was pure domination from the whistle at the start of the match. And Inter, with the experience and the veteran leadership that we have on the team, 0 response the whole match. Maybe you can say the last, there's a middle point in that first half, 10 minutes or so, where Inter maybe got on the front foot a little bit. But if we're being honest with ourselves, and I'm sure if the team is being honest with themselves in the dressing room after or in the subsequent days after, it was just an absolute shit show. It was a complete domination from start to finish by Paris Saint-Germain, and it was nothing we could do about it. It seemed like we got, from the get-go, our strategy or even our mentality wrong. The first half, of course, the first person to score was Hakimi, former Inter player, didn't celebrate. But something before that, if you remember watching the match, it was either a corner or a free kick. I believe it was a couple corners that Paris won. Inter going into the match, everyone, analysts, fans alike, knew that where we were going to be more dominant and have the chances in this match had been this way the whole Champions League. Serie A, the same way, is on set pieces and that ability to kind of bully and overpower teams on set pieces. But Paris, it was the first 10 minutes or so. I forget what exactly minute it was. There's a couple passages where they had back-to-back set pieces, whether it was a corner or two or what, I can't really remember. trying to blank out the match out of my mind. But Marquinhos got a header on the ball. There was another one that was close. I think Kvaratskhelia had a header that was close. And that first 5, 6, 7 minutes when that occurred, you could kind of sense that something was different about this match. Again, we came into the match feeling like we were the best team in the planet on set pieces. And when a team comes in and unexpectedly punches you in the face on something that, now they didn't score, but punches you in the face on something that you're supposed to be the best in the world at, that will have you sit back on your heels a little bit and get your mind into the game of, oh shit, we're not the dominant team here that we thought we were. And it was just, we couldn't get a touch on the ball. Bastoni, Di Marco, Barella, these players were misplacing passes. Mkhitaryan, Çalhanoğlu, Sommer was misplacing passes left and right. Everyone looked uncomfortable. Cherby, I don't even think Lautaro touched the ball in the first 10 minutes. Thuram had a couple chances to hold up the ball, but Lautaro, Dumfries, they were nowhere in the first 10 minutes, and that was just PSG suffocating us. And from the first whistle to the last whistle of the match, it was that way the entire match. We didn't have a single player that stepped up trying to bring the energy or anything. There was a lack of energy the entire match, a lack of hope, it seemed like, and I don't know where that came from. You know, we've seen Inter not do well for full matches, but at least one half of these matches that we've seen them not do well in, there's a response. There's some sort of, whether it be the first half we play great and we drop off the second half, or the first half we didn't show up, and second half we played great. And that's one critical thing all season, is we've never played a full match. Some matches we have, you know, Lazio, you could say, even though Lazio had some chances. Atalanta, that first 4-0 match. There's been some matches, but consistently the whole season it hadn't. So we were expecting a response maybe in the second half due to how pitiful the first half was. And there was just no response this whole match. Not really sure what the mentality going into the game was. But yeah, it was apparent from the first kickoff that we weren't going to do what we wanted to do. And PSG, they were on the attack. They used their defense as an attack. They suffocated us everywhere. And really, the first half, you know, there's a couple players, but Di Marco was the pick of the bunch. That was absolutely terrible. Listening to different podcasts and stuff, Di Marco, the calendar year 2025 has not been great. Not been to the standard that he used to be, that he's been previously. He's just not been great. And this match might be the fall off of Di Marco. It's going to be tough for him to bounce back. We're really going to see mentally what he has between the ears to bounce back from a performance like this. The first goal, Hakimi, I mentioned already, scored. Former Inter player for a season, still holds Inter true and dear to his heart. Mentions them all the time as a place that he loves. The movement by PSG was impeccable, that whole build-up. But if you watch, I saw a reverse, not like the actual camera angle that was for the game. It was like a fan's camera angle from the phone of the sideline closest to where Dumfries is on that right side. And you can see Hakimi drifting into the middle, and where Di Marco pretty much is standing. Di Marco is the last defender. Now Dumfries is back there too, but Di Marco is the last defender holding on. I want to say it was Desiree Douy maybe, or I can't remember exactly who it was, the PSG player that was slipped through by Vitinha. Held him on, so that was the first mistake. And then goes to try and shut down that ball, leaving as the last defender another person in Hakimi wide open in the middle of the field. He was shell-shocked, and it was it was a mistake that was inevitable, that was coming if you watch the start of the match. And it was one that Inter, once that happened, the game was over, essentially. You could say the game was over at the first whistle. Maybe there was still some hope, but yeah, once that first goal went in, and like I said, the first couple set pieces, I feel like and this was why after the match, maybe I wasn't as upset as a lot of other Interisti were. I kind of knew. It sucks as an Inter fan, and don't want to really admit that, but you could just tell there was dominance by PSG, and it was not going to be our day. Now, in the subsequent hours after and the day after yesterday was tough. It settled in, and I was very angry and pissed off and disappointed. But it was the writing was on the wall from minute one in this match. It felt like, and then when Desiree Doué, it was almost like a counterattack. What we usually do to teams, PSG hit us on the counter, and you could say it was fortunate. DiMarco completely turned his back, so even if Doué wouldn't have shot the ball, he would have had a touch out wide, and DiMarco would have been 5 seconds late in responding because he turned his back. Doué shot, deflected off of DiMarco, nothing Sommer could do, 2-0, first half, done and dusted. And the age, we'll get to that later, but we'll just end talking about, I think at the middle to end of the first half, there were some decent responses. Thuram got the ball a couple times and held the ball up, finally releasing Dumfries. I think Lautaro had a couple times where he found Dumfries out, and that was really our only outlet. You would think PSG would have known that Dumfries was our biggest threat of attack, but didn't really focus too much on that side. They knew that they could just shut us down man for man instead of really focusing on one side. And yeah, we had a chance. I think it was Thuram off of a corner. Acerbi had one off of a corner. And other than that, the first half, it was all PSG domination. Going into the second half, I think I saw Steven Gerrard at halftime apparently had said that what Inter needed to do, what Inzaghi needed to do, was show DiMarco the shower and not even let him come out of the changing room from halftime. Inzaghi, no changes at half. DiMarco didn't come off. Mkhitaryan in his old age didn't come off. Çalhanoğlu, who I think really had a poor game, wasn't able to influence the match at any point. It was just a shit show, and there was no changes. I said the game was screaming for maybe Carlos Augusto to come in, replacing DiMarco. Maybe Fratesi or Zalewski come in for Mkhitaryan. Maybe we play a 3-4-1-2, have somebody high enough to kind of pressure Vitinha whenever he receives the ball deep, but also be able to unleash and play with the strikers underneath or make that run in behind when they're trying to hold the ball up. But no changes, nothing like that. No change of tactics when you've been bullied for one whole half of soccer. In a final, you can't just sit back, in my opinion, and allow the game hopefully to change. But Inzaghi, no changes. And then once Desiree Doué scored the third goal, it was all over. And it got worse from that. I watched the whole match, but I watched it in kind of a foggy haze. I know Kvaratskhelia scored the fourth goal. Couldn't even tell you who scored the fifth goal. I just saw it go in, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's the worst defeat in Champions League history, losing 5-0 in the final. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to be a fan of a squad that loses 5-0 in a final. And it's something that is going to be with Inter for history now. It's every team we play is going to mention that and rile up. Any fans you see out in public while you're wearing Inter gear is going to be mentioning the 5-0 defeat. And that's a part of our history now, unfortunately. And it's something you're going to have to get used to as an Inter fan. It's something that is going to follow us, like I said, forever. And yeah, it was hats off to Paris Saint-Germain. They had a game plan, they stuck to it, and the game plan was successful, and we had no response to it. It was Luis Enrique absolutely outclassing, and his tactics were way better than Inzaghi's were on the day. And it's tough to say a manager is not great when you've won 2 trebles with 2 different clubs. And I think Luis Enrique, he hadn't been talked about as much. It seemed like in the build-up, a lot of the conversation was Inzaghi being the best coach in the world, and Luis Enrique must have been pissed because he came through and completely showed why he maybe is the best manager in the world. Vitinha for Paris Saint-Germain, I think that shows the gulf. At one point, Çalhanoğlu, and I still think he's a great regista. At one point, we were considering him one of the best deep-lying playmakers in the world. But when you watch Vitinha in this match, you can see the big change or the big gap in quality there. Maybe not even quality, but the big gap in motor and drive and what they bring to the table. And maybe Vitinha is more of a modern deep-lying midfielder, and Çalhanoğlu is a deep-lying player from the past kind of deal. And if you watch Vitinha, not only was his passing over the top good, he was finding spaces dribbling past our press, our midfielders. And that's something you don't really see Çalhanoğlu do a lot. It's more find the ball deep and try and spray balls over the top and out wide. So maybe we need to find a player that can pick the ball from deep and dribble past a player or two. Zielinski doesn't really like playing that deep-lying playmaker role, but he's the type of player that can dribble past players. Just a thought. Hakimi, absolutely maddening how great he was this match. It seemed like he was doing that Pep Guardiola tactic a lot of the times where he would kind of drift into center of midfield and Ousmane Dembele would come out wide on the right side. And the movement of the team, Paris, was so fluid, and our players had no answer for it, really. They were zombies. They were stuck. They had cement in their boots. They couldn't move. It was, the only thing I could think of is maybe these players were so used to playing every 3 days and having actually a whole 8-day rest period. When you give 36 and 37-year-old players 8 days to recover, it takes longer to build that motor back. Maybe if the match would have been played the Monday after that Como match last Friday or the Friday before, maybe we would have had a different response. I don't know. It was an absolute embarrassment of a showing, and it's one, like I said, we're going to have to live through history now. It's going to be a stain on Inter's history for the rest of time, and it's something that we're going to have to get used to getting mentioned. But how did it get this way, I guess, is where we need to go next. What went wrong, I guess. And like I said, it was right from the get-go. The team, in my opinion, looked like it was caught in two minds from the start. It seemed like the tactical instructions maybe, well, it seemed like they were caught in two minds, but it can't be the tactics. The thing with Inzaghi that we mention all the time, what I was saying in the build-up to the game with a lot of my friends, Inzaghi's biggest strength is also his biggest weakness, in the sense that he's very predictable. It's going to be a 3-5-2. Whoever is his preferred lineup. So the last Champions League final, Lukaku was on great form. People were talking, hey, Lukaku maybe needs to start this final. Dzeko hadn't been playing as well. He did score against Milan in the quarterfinals, but Lukaku in the league was coming on and being a beast. The build-up to that match, it was all about, who's going to start. Inzaghi did what he does every match that season. It's Dzeko and Lautaro up top. Same with this match. Coming into it, Pavard recovering from injury. Is it going to be him or Bisek? We knew it was going to be Pavard. Mkhitaryan, getting older, hasn't played well in a while. Is he going to play Zielinski? Is he going to push Zalewski in there? We knew it was going to be Mkhitaryan. Left side, DiMarco hasn't played great 2025. Has been absolutely getting torched by Lamine Yamal. Players on that side, his defensive work rate's not great. Maybe it's time for Carlos Augusto. We knew it was going to be Federico Di Marco playing on that left side. That's just how Inzaghi is. He's very predictable. He has his starting lineup, and it doesn't deviate from that. That's a big strength because you get the consistency week in and week out of these players playing together, knowing the structure, knowing the shape, maybe knowing certain things to get out of trouble. But also it's a big weakness because your opposition knows this. They know Di Marco is not good on defensive side. Let's exploit that. Let's get Hakimi. Let's get Dembele. Let's get all of them drifting out to our right side so we can attack that left side of Di Marco. So I think Inzaghi really, and we'll talk a little more about Inzaghi, I think he got outclassed. But the players, like I said, in the first 5 minutes, it seemed like they were caught in two minds. They didn't know if they should sit back deep. There was a lot of times you could see we were playing that 5-flat 3-2 kind of formation, but then we'd break out, and it was like, do they not know if they want to sit back and absorb pressure and let PSG control the ball in the middle third of the pitch, and really suffocate them when they get to their attacking third? Or do we want to maybe open up a little bit and expand and take the game to PSG? And there was no real consistency to the thought processes of the players early on. And then whenever they scored, it was just like, oh shit, we need a response. So that was a little alarming. I don't know what in the build up to this match caused that, but a team of full of veterans, like I said, we're apparently like 4 years on average older than PSG, to be shell shocked and kicked in the face that early on was extremely alarming, and it just, nothing ever recovered. And that's something coming to a point that we're going to make later that you need to keep in the back of your mind. I thought Di Marco and Mkhitaryan were absolutely terrible. Di Marco was at fault for the first two goals. He shouldn't have been on the pitch. It should have been Carlos Augusto. Granted, when he came on, he didn't do much better. The game was already lost at that point. But we've seen this downfall of Di Marco in this season, and it just looks like he's not fit. I've seen some people say maybe it looks like he's a smoker, a cigarette smoker, and maybe that's true. Don't want to speculate. Don't want to start any rumors. But that kind of does seem true. He has no energy, and he has no desire to defend, and it's alarming for an Inter player, a former Inter fan, a former Cordova fan, who has been an Interisti for life. There's no passion in his game. You're playing for the club of your youth, your childhood, your boyhood club, and to see no passion in when you're defending or even attacking recently, it's kind of frustrating to see the fall from grace from Di Marco. And then Mkhitaryan, we've been mentioning him. I sent out a short or reel, whatever you want to call it, 5-6 months ago about how Mkhitaryan has to not be our starter. It needs to be Zielinski, someone who can dribble out of trouble, someone who can make a pass in the attacking third that doesn't go to the opposition. And he offered nothing in the first half. Him, Çalhanoğlu, Barella, they all were simply outclassed by the midfield of PSG. And again, some of that is tactics. PSG, a lot of times, like I said, was having Hakimi come into the midfield and Dembele drop in, overloading the midfield. So essentially it was a 5-on-3 there in the middle. But whenever we did get the ball and everything, everything was too slow. There was no fluidity in our game, and it was really the big difference in the match was them winning the midfield versus our midfield. And I think it's time maybe we freshen up that midfield three, and it begins with Mkhitaryan. I think he needs to retire, and I think we need to move on and bring some youth and energy into that midfield. We won't go deep in this. We're going to make some points about that later. And then brings us to Inzaghi. I don't know what happened in the pre-match, in the build-up to this match. All the rumors coming out about him going to Saudi. I don't know what to believe and what not to believe. Tomorrow is Tuesday. Apparently they're holding a summit. We will see what the decision is on Inzaghi. But something wasn't right. It was his mind maybe somewhere else. Did the players hear all these reports? Did he tell the players that he's going somewhere else? I don't know exactly what happened. Speculation. Your mind can wander anything after a 5-0 defeat like this. But even in game, the decision making was questionable, which is something that you don't see from Inzaghi often. We criticize him. I've criticized him. A lot of people criticize him of his inability to have a plan B, his predictability, which I said can be his greatest strength, is also his greatest weakness. And he has no deviation from that predictability. It's the same subs week in and week out at the same time, week in and week out. And it's a pattern that it's kind of It's interesting that this is the first time. Well, you can even say this isn't the first time this has happened. If you look against Fiorentina, Palladino, that match we lost 3-0. Milan 3-0. This is a season in which we've never seen from an Inzaghi team getting defeated this bad multiple times in a season. I think after that Fiorentina game, it was the first time we'd lost 3-0 or given up 3 goals without scoring, something like that, since 2017, 2018. And it happened 2 subsequent times this season against Milan and against PSG, now famously, that it's a worrying trend. And he had no response. 0 response. The subs he made, you're down 2-0 at half, no substitutions. 54th minute, still down. We bring on Zalewski and Jan Bisek for DiMarco and Benji Pavard. Granted, you're down 2-0. Bisek, Zalewski, 2 defenders. Zalewski on the left side. We're getting torched to the left side. DiMarco defending terribly. You bring on Zalewski, a guy who's not known for defending. Bisek, a guy who's got a mistake in him, for Pavard. Now, Pavard was rusty, maybe not fully fit. I could understand that substitution. But if you're going to want to take out DiMarco, Zalewski's not the answer there. Put Zalewski on for Mkhitaryan or something. But if you're wanting to shore up a side, Carlos Augusto is the only answer there on that left wing side to potentially help you defensively. Zalewski can give you maybe more of a threat going forward. But at that point, if you're wanting a threat going forward, put on a freaking striker. Bring on Fratesi to play higher up the pitch. Do something. But a left wing back, that's the response. Questionable, to say the least. Unfortunately, Bisek got hurt like 6 or 7 minutes later. The next sub window, though, Darmian for Bisek. He got hurt. We understand that. But then Carlos Augusto for Mkhitaryan. So then you're going to move maybe Zalewski in there and put Carlos Augusto. But that's already 10 minutes after the subs you just made. So we're now in the 70th minute. You're down 3-0 now, chasing the match. Still no strikers come on. Still no Arnautovic, no Taremi, no Fratesi. Down 3-0 in a Champions League final where you need a goal. Absolutely terrible decision making, piss poor. And then finally, to rub salt in the wound, Aslani in for Çalhanoğlu, the final substitution. Now, I know Çalhanoğlu got hurt, but Aslani, bring on Arnautovic. If you're down 3-0, 4-0, just bring on a striker. Fratesi, do something. Don't allow the game to end only having 1 shot on goal. Thuram at the end probably should have done better, but who cares? The game was already lost at that point. Do something differently. They say you change to a 4-4-2. That's whenever I think PSG scored their 3rd goal. Right after that, it was a beautiful goal, actually. There's the one where Dembele back heel flicked, unleashing Vitinha, who's that deep line playmaker, again, surging through the midfield, something we haven't seen Çalhanoğlu do in a while, and unleashing Doué in for the 3rd goal. Another thing I want to bring up from note, the 2nd goal, Barella waiting for the ball to go out. Pacho using his determination, his hustle, his strength to get around Barella and save the ball from going out inches, unleashing the counterattack, which had the 2nd goal. That moment right there was the difference in the match. If you look at any point to show where the gulp in class and quality and determination was, it's that 2nd goal, and it started all from the back. They wanted it more, and that part right there was really what showed the difference in this match. And once it got to 3-0, the game was over, like I said. But Inzaghi, his ideas, his tactics, everything Luis Enrique dominated him at. And it showed on the pitch. It showed on the pitch. you don't lose 5-0 and there's, one thing that's wrong. It's about a multitude of things. And we've been talking about a multitude of these things, but Inzaghi got outclassed. It seemed like his mind was elsewhere. And again, we heard the reports going in, and we've been seeing the reports since the match. Maybe his mind was elsewhere, but come on, that's not fair. That's not fair to the team. It's not fair to the players. It's not fair to the fans, more importantly. The fans who, save up their money week in and week out to be able to watch these games, who sacrifice time on the weekends to watch these matches and support this club. And it was a spit in the face. It was an absolute spit in the face by Inzaghi. I've been a big Inzaghi fan this whole season, 3 or 4 past seasons. Whenever he first got hired, I wasn't a big fan, and the results, whenever they weren't going there, losing the Scudetto to Milan and the subsequent, 4 or 5 matches after that, 4 or 5 months after that season, the Napoli Scudetto winning season where we started off terribly, but then we made that run in the Champions League, and it was easy to forgive Inzaghi and then what he's done since. But this is just an absolute spit in the face to us fans, and it's tough. If he does stay, it's going to be very tough for him to get this fan base back on board with him. And yeah, we'll have to see where it goes from here. And then I would just say the last point is the team was just atrocious. It wasn't just one singular player. We've called out Di Marco, we've called out Mkhitaryan. It was everybody. Lautaro didn't find the ball, it seemed like, for the first 25 minutes of the match. Thuram, first 10, 15 minutes, couldn't hold the ball up to save his life. Dumfries in that flat back 5 in the first 20, 30 minutes looked lazy, like he didn't want to defend. Whenever we unleashed him on an attack, he looked like he was more of a different player. The midfield 3 got overran. Acerbi had the worst possible match, the worst maybe end to his career imaginable. Got absolutely set down by Barcola. Got a stupid yellow card from the frustration, and it just was a terrible ending for Francesco Acerbi. Pavard looked rusty, stale, looked like he hadn't played in 2 months, which is a month, which is true. Bastoni was late. Everything he tried was not there. It was just absolutely atrocious from every player on the team. And the hard thing is the response. There was no response. And it was also very hard to see the giving up. After the 3rd goal for PSG, these players just absolutely gave up. And again, going back to Inzaghi and how that's difficult for the fans, to see the players, once you go down 3-0, absolutely give up on the match and allow those last 2 goals that they allowed without really any defending or attempt to try. That's the thing that's been bothering me the most after the match. Like I said, I think after that 2nd goal, even the 1st goal, kind of had it in my mind that, oh, well, this is not going to go our way. And it made the defeat maybe a little easier during the fact, but in the subsequent 24 to 48 hours after it, just the lack of effort and the lack of dedication and the lack of, I guess, will of the players was just, as a fan of 20 plus years, I'm not the only fan. I know a lot of the fans that I'm friends with the group messages that I'm in and everything, they echo the same sentiment. And as a fan, this was a spit in the face to us. I can live with a 5-0 defeat if the effort's there and the will, the grinta, all of that is there. But we simply saw a team that gave up at the end of the match. And that's the thing that's the toughest to swallow, the toughest pill to swallow, the toughest thing of this whole loss is that these players, they gave up. And maybe we blew our load too soon. Maybe that game against Barcelona, that 4-3 match, Acerbi scoring in the 93rd minute, Fratesi scoring in extra time, maybe that was our Champions League final. like I said, maybe we blew our load way too soon. It's tough. You see, as an American NFL, I'm a Minnesota Vikings fan. The Minneapolis Miracle, one of the most legendary plays of the last 10, 15 years in the NFL. Incredible. I can't tell you what it felt like going through that moment, watching the match and the joy. But again, that was not the NFC Championship game. That was not the Super Bowl. That was the conference match, the game before the NFC Championship game. And that high was so high that you're going to have an even bigger fall after that. And what happened the next week? The Vikings went up to Philadelphia, scored the first touchdown of the game, 7-0. Everybody thought everything was going good. Ended up getting absolutely demolished, 38-7. Didn't score another touchdown the rest of the match. And maybe that's what happens when you blow your load too soon. It's that high is something that these players, I don't think, I don't know how to explain what I'm trying to explain, but that high of that Barcelona match was so high that was our peak. That was our Champions League final right there. And it kind of felt that way whenever we went out, and it's felt that way in the past few weeks. It's kind of like, well, we beat Barcelona, the writing's on the wall, the destiny, and maybe the players felt that way, the way that Barcelona game ended, the writing is on the wall, it's destiny. Inter has a mentality and just destined to win this Champions League. And destiny doesn't get you shit. It's pretty obvious that the team that was more well prepared, the team with better younger players, and the team that actually showed up and wanted to win the match, destiny wasn't in their mind at that point. And it's tough as a fan, like I said, for us. We've been with this team week in and week out, watching at work on a Wednesday for these 2:45 Eastern Standard Time, 2:45 p.m., 14:45 for everybody outside of the U.S. That's the time here in the U.S. that these Champions League midweek matches are during the workday, or these Coppa Italia matches that are at the same time kickoff. We're watching this at work with an earphone in, listening while we're hard at work. We're the ones on the weekends taking our phones out to public places to watch the matches while also trying to be social with our family, stuff like that. And to see just this level of piss poor response and attitude and the performance, it's not fair to us fans. And that's the most disappointing thing about this whole weekend and the next subsequent few weeks until the Club World Cup, is just living with that fact. Not sure how the players are reacting. I did see Dumfries after the match and his response to the fans, and it's I don't want to harp too hard about it, but as a fan, as someone who's saved up a lot of money and went to Milan this season to go to a match and all this, for it to end this way, it's bitter in the mouth. It's tough to swallow, but again, we have games coming up soon, and this is Inter. This isn't the first time we've been disappointed. It's Forza Inter. This is what you get when you love this club. You get the highs, like I've mentioned before, and you also get the crazy lows. This is definitely the craziest, lowest of the low. So yeah, we'll move on. There's not much more I can harp about. Now we're going to get to maybe a more positive spin, a positive light here. A thing that I think is important to think about now after this drug fest. Where do we find the positives? It's tough. It's tough to find any positive right now after that performance, but we have to move on. What do they say about golfers? The best golfers in the world, if they hit a bad shot, they forget about it immediately, and it's on to what's the next shot. How can I improve shot by shot? And that's what it's going to have to be from not only the players, but also the coaching staff, who that might be, and also, more importantly, the management structure, I think, moving forward from Inter. First things first, Simone Inzaghi, what is going to happen? Like I said earlier, tomorrow, is the summit meeting that Inter management decided to hold with Inzaghi to see where his next move is. So where do we go from here? So if Inzaghi stays, it's going to be tough. I'm conflicted because, like I said, I've been an Inzaghi fan for a while now. But after this type of performance and the responses from the players, there's reports of a fallout between Fratesi and Inzaghi after this match. Do the players still listen to Inzaghi if he stays? Is that instruction, that tactical nuances that he's giving these players, is that going in one ear, out the other after a 5-0 performance like this? Or is it something that is going to become a problem? And that's something that Beppe Marotta and Auxilio have to think about as well. Not only is it Inzaghi's decision, but it's also Inter's decision. That everybody always says there's no one player bigger than the club. There's no one manager bigger than the club either. So that's a decision that management's going to have to make as well. But also, what are the alternatives we bring in? There's reports of Fabregas, unproven, had a great season with Como this season. Doesn't really play the same system as Inzaghi, especially if we're bringing in Luis Enrique and Peter Sucic, these players who Sucic was brought in January. Luis Enrique we've been linked to for a while now, is official apparently. Inter hasn't made it official, but Fabrizio Romano has given us the here we go. These are players, if we've been scouting them for a while and bringing them in and being linked with them for a while, these are Inzaghi-style players, then at that point, are they going to fit into Fabregas' plans and system? Roberto De Zerbi from Marseille was at Brighton for a while, most notably Sassuolo in Serie A. Can play a 3 in the back kind of system. He would be, if Inzaghi does leave, of the names mentioned, my preferred choice. But again, never really managed. Marseille is a big club, but never has managed a club on the level of Inter. You could say Simone Inzaghi didn't before Inter. Lazio is a decently sized club, but they're not Inter. So who knows? De Zerbi, he has relationships with players. He's Italian. That could potentially be a decent option. But will he improve upon what Inzaghi has? Who knows? There's also Christian Kivu. Maybe that would be a short-term replacement that we would see only in the Club World Cup. I don't think that is a feasible option at all for a long-term thing. But yeah, who else? Thiago Motta. I think that's maybe a decent name that I haven't seen passed around. He can play that 3 in the back like he has with Bologna. We're being linked to former Bologna players that have played with him. He knows Inter as a structure, as a club. I haven't seen many reports, but I think that maybe would be a smart, logical option. And then one that I have not seen a report on, nowhere, this is just me fantasizing. This Inter squad has gone through Conte, the core of the squad, Conte, and then Inzaghi. 2 managers, very similar in their approach to managing players, and a very, almost like dictator-like, it's my way or the highway, very strict, always on their ass, always yelling, always, trying to keep that energy up. Maybe these players need a manager of a token of a player's manager, someone who just lets them go out and be themselves, gives them the keys, but lets them drive the car, isn't the one who's driving the car the entire time like a Conte and an Inzaghi maybe is more like. So one name I would like to see maybe us try and go for is, why not Zidane? He will let these players express themselves, gives them the freedom. He will bring in some younger players. People would want to play with Zidane. He would maybe make little tweaks to the tactical, but I don't think he would make too many tweaks. I think we would still maybe play a 3 in the back with him, and he would just let these players play. And maybe that's something that these guys need, because you could tell in this match that just seemed like something they weren't responding. And maybe towards the end of the season, you could kind of tell that. But we were still fighting on these fronts, and we just didn't want to believe it. But maybe it's time they get someone that isn't barking at them 24/7 And I think maybe Zidane would be a good alternative. Again, he hasn't been linked or anything like that. That's just a name that I wanted to throw out there. But where do we go with Inzaghi? We'll see. Tomorrow will be a pretty big day for Inter's modern history. And if he goes to Al Hilal, I mean, 30 million a year, it's tough to say. The thing that would piss me off more is if he had already agreed on this contract before the Champions League final. If that comes out, that reports that he was already signed and gone before, then Inzaghi, piss on you. That's piss poor way to do the work, and you can see, that would be the reason we lost 5-0. It would be absolutely, it'd be a spit in the face to the fans if that comes out and it's true. And I think Inzaghi leaving on that note would really tarnish his legacy as an Inter manager, and he would be in the same category as a Conte or a Judas of the level of just betrayal to the fans. So hopefully that doesn't come out. But yeah, where do we go? Manager and then signings. So I've seen some people saying, this is going to be a full-on rebuild and all that stuff, but we still have a young core. Now we have old players, don't get me wrong. We have Acerbi, Darmian, Jan Sommer, Mkhitaryan, Arnautovic, all these older players. But the players who are key to this squad and are the most important players in Italy and for Inter, and you can even say some of the biggest players on the planet, are under 29 years old. Lautaro, Bastoni, Barella. I don't want to throw Di Marco in there anymore because unfortunately I think he might be cooked. Dumfries, Pavard, all these players are Thuram. All these players are core, are not over 30 years old. So really we're needing to bring in young, fresh talent to surround around this core and build with young, athletic, exciting prospects to help this core keep them fresh. Because if you look at Barella, Lautaro, all these players, Bastoni, there's no one behind them pushing them week in and week out to make them better players. It's all older players, and these players know, and it's kind of going back to Inzaghi, his biggest weakness is this predictability. These players know they're not going to get set. Mkhitaryan knows he's not going to get set or benched, and having a younger squad and maybe a new manager, maybe that's the motivation that these guys need. Maybe Barella needs a 21-year-old Peter Sucic behind him in training every day, trying to break through to get into that first squad and having realistic potential to do that, and not an Inzaghi coach that's going to be like, you've been playing good in training, showing good on the pitch, but we're going to go with Barella regardless. We're going to go with Mkhitaryan regardless. No, we need a coach that will maybe make these changes. And we need players, young players that are hungry to come in and push these older core players. So I think that's important. And I think you can also see on the European and global scale, that's the way all of football is going. Look at who we've played in the last two games in the Champions League, Barcelona and PSG. Two of the youngest teams in Champions League, and they're going that far. Arsenal, not an older team. All these teams are young and exciting and fresh, and we're old, stale, boring. So I think, and from reports and the moves we've already made, bringing in younger players is going to be. Marotta even came out and said this is what Oak Tree wants and this is what we're going to do. You can see with Peter Sucic, he's 21 years old. Luis Enrique is 23 years old. Who else? Zalewski, if we redeem him, he's pretty young. That seems to be where we're going, and that's exciting. Out with the old, in with the new, while keeping our core of Lautaro, Barella, Bastoni, Thuram, these players. That's going to be important. I don't think it's going to be a full-on rebuild, and I think that's maybe where a manager, if they do go with the Fabregas, we're not having to go through a rebuild. We're having to go through just a refreshing, I guess would be what you would call it. And so I think this is good, and I think as bad as it sounds, this 5-0 loss maybe was the best thing for management to see, that we need to get younger and get refreshed. If you think back 2010, the treble season, it was great. 2-0. You will never have anything like that. That was a pinnacle. I said in my one of my group messages, 2010 was about as close to spirituality as I'll ever be, and yesterday or Saturday was about as close to um, torment as I'll ever be. But if you look at the response from the club and the management after 2010, we were riding that high. And we didn't try and revitalize, didn't try and refresh. We kept the same core of players, the legends that we know and love. But then the subsequent years after that, 2011, we still didn't win the Scudetto, but we still won Coppa Italia, a couple other things, FIFA Club World Cup. But then the sharp, without having younger, good replacements to come in and replace the older players that were on their way out, we entered the banter era, and we were there for almost a decade. So maybe this 5-0 loss, it was the best thing as far as, because we're at a crossroads with our lineup, and maybe this was the best thing for the management to see. All right, yes, our motive of wanting to go out and buy younger players is the right way to do this going forward. Only time will tell, but who knows? And then another thing that I think is something we need to think about as a positive and be excited about is our management structure. This isn't Suning anymore. We can spend money now. We're not restricted in money with the revenues we've been bringing in the last 3 seasons, going deep in the Champions League. All of this, all the money we're getting, FIFA Club World Cup, all the money we're getting for participating in that, we can spend money now, and we're not constricted to selling to buy. We're not constricted by Chinese government ruling like we were with Sony. So it's going to be exciting times, and we can see Oaktree, the level of quickness that we're sealing these deals with. Luis Enrique is already done. Peter Sucic already done. That's just one of a few. I think we're going to see quite a bit more signings in the next few weeks. And that's exciting to see this management structure. It's also exciting to see Beppe Marotta come out and say, we are going to be buying young players. It's also exciting for him to come out and say, we are building a new stadium with Milan, and it's going to happen, and it's going to be beginning in 2027. We've never had that come out. There's been speculation, media reports, all this. We've never had anyone come out and say, we are actually getting a new stadium. So new younger players that we're actually going to be able to buy and not have to sell to buy, a new stadium. And lastly, I think it's very important, this isn't getting talked about enough, but this new Serie C team that's going to be Primavera players, younger players that we're bringing in that are going to be able to compete against professional footballers is very important. You can see some of the youth players that Juve brought in that had some success at the beginning of the season, Savona, and I forget what the other guy's name is. Hopefully we can start getting integrated young players like this into the squad too. So it's a very exciting time as an Inter fan. And you can just see we're becoming more relevant in world football, not just in Italy, but around the globe. People are talking about Inter. Now they're going to be talking about us about the 5-0 defeat. But people are still talking about us, and that's getting us in world football. People still talk about Man United, albeit, kind of jokingly, but they're still talking about Man United. So Inter is entering this conversation of being a real, talked about, serious, big club. It's exciting. It's exciting times to be an Inter fan. I think right now is the most exciting time we can have as Inter fans. So with all the darkness and the bleak and the bad that's come from the past couple days, I'm here to say there is good stuff on the horizon. So keep your head up and try and take what I'm saying with just a little grain of salt, because I know it is tough still thinking about the 5-0 defeat, but there is hope on the horizon, hopefully. Again, it's at a crossroads. We'll see the end of this week where we're at again, because there's still so many uncertainties. But hopefully, we have some good answers after this week, and we can move forward as a club and learn from this. The important thing is a response. After losing 5-0, you can either let that eat you up, and you can let that define you as a club, really. And we could go the next 3 or 4 years in mediocrity, or will these players respond and let that 5-0 defeat fuel them for the next season? Because Serie A is not going to get any easier. Everybody's reinvesting and trying to get strong. Champions League's not going to get any easier. All these young teams are getting better and getting more experience every year. And Inter is now not an afterthought. They're a team that's present in the Champions League, so we're going to have that target on our back. So how are these players going to respond is the important thing. So be really interesting to see what the response is moving forward. But this is a really long one today, guys. Appreciate all the support. As always, Forza Inter.